Swadika. Good morning and a very warm welcome to all of the distinguished guests and participants. I'm Anna Nayapatana from the Thailand Development Research Institute, and I'll be serving as today's MC. On behalf of the Thailand Development Research Institute and the Japan Economic Foundation, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 2025 TDRI JEF Asia Pacific Forum under the theme Recalibrating Asia's Economic Future, Trade, Technology, and Sustainability in a Complex Geoeconomic Environment. Today, we are joined by policymakers, experts, and business leaders from across East and Southeast Asia to explore how our region can navigate the shifting global landscape of trade, technology, and sustainability. So before we begin, I have a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Restrooms are located just outside this room to your left-hand side. And in case of emergency, the nearest fire exit is right there, and the hotel staff will also guide us if needed. Thank you. So, to begin our program, may I now invite our co-organizers to deliver the opening remarks. First, please welcome Mr. Masakazu Toyoda, Chairman and CEO of the Japan Economic Foundation. Next, may I invite Dr. Somkiat Tangkitwanit, President of the Thailand Development Research Institute.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a good sleep tonight. Yesterday night, not tonight. I'm Kazu Toyoda, Chairman of Japan Economic Foundation, so-called JEF. The co-host of this forum with TDRI, Thai Development Research Institute. It is with my utmost pleasure to welcome you here today, although a few friends had to be online because I understand they had a prior engagement. This year actually marks 24 round of forum, and it may become one of the turning points of our forum since we have 3 new members today. Can I ask you to stand up for 2 new members today here in this room and show your face. New member from India. Thank you very much. And a new member from area. Thank you very much. I don't know, online, maybe we don't have I think the screen is coming to present a new member from New Zealand, but it takes time, so maybe later on.
See the real person.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. New members.
Thank you.
Please wave your hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Since this forum has a long history of being held every year continuously, it is quite unique in that regard. I feel this Asia Pacific Forum has become more important than ever, considering the unpredictable change made worldwide and more uncertain challenges arose to take on after the new world order. The ASEAN countries continue to be a region where strong economic growth is expected, making an important destination for trade and investment, not only for Japan, but for other Asian Pacific economy. Usually we tend to say India, Pacific region as well. Japan is seeking to strengthen ties with Southeast Asia in a direction of cooperation and stability, and trying to deepen relations even further with ASEAN, especially to secure supply chain, keyword supply chain important. The Thailand, as the host country this year, has strong institutional foundations for economic activities, and among many member countries established over the years. As for Japan, cooperation is progressing in industries like automobile and in energy environment initiative and digitalization transformation. Today, we have two important goals. One is to have lively and frank but positive discussion to observe and know the realities of the mutual issues, to speak and find solution on the following three important areas. First, technology and industrial policy. Second, climate change and energy. And third, new world order, particularly in trade. Second is to make these variable results to be reflected in the policies in each of our economies. It will be a shame if the variable outcomes were left to simply utilized as they are. Last but not least, to successfully open this forum, I know many people, especially the staff in the Secretariat, have contributed their efforts to make it happen. I'd like to give my sincere appreciation to our dear friend, Dr. Somkiat, and President of TDRI, Thai Development Research Institute, and also his team led by Newin-san and Anna-san, who have communicated intensively with JEF team, Junko Ishii's team, until yesterday for the event. Let's enjoy our discussion. Thank you very much for your listening. Thank you.
So first of all, let me thank JEF for inviting TDRI to be part of this very important Asia Pacific Forum, and also congratulate to JEF for its 24th anniversary of the Asia Pacific Forum. Very important event. I think JEF Asia Pacific Forum always capture important things around the world and very timely. At the end of October, we see that Trump and Xi Jinping has met in Korea at the APEC meeting sideline, and they announced the trade war truce. 2 days ago, November 5th, I read the news and really excited to see the news about AI design antibody drugs that will one day will help us fight cancer. And next week, next Monday, COP30 will begin in Brazil. So these are three issues that we are going to discuss. during today, which is trade, technology, and sustainability. And last night we had a gathering. Welcome you all. Dr. Narongchai has mentioned very important thing that Japanese are very serious. That's why Japan is a technology country, and Thailand is very relaxed. That's why we are a country of wellness tourism. So I hope that we have today a Japanese style serious and rigorous discussions, a Thai style nice food and relaxed stay. Thank you so much for coming and join us.
We now move to our keynote address. It is our honor to introduce Dr. Narongchai Akkaraserani, former Minister of Energy and former Minister of Commerce of Thailand, who will speak on Asia's strategic role in the New World Order.
Good morning, participants. Good morning, friends. There are many long-time friends here. I do not use the word old friends. You know, I don't see anybody as old these days. I don't like that word old. I've been asked to give a keynote speech. Don't think of it as a speech. It's a reflection of my views about what's going on and what I would like to see happening about this so-called global order or global disorder. And the title is about Asia. So the first thing we need to define what is Asia that we would like to cover. I show you the map here. Definitely we have South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. But I don't think we should include Central Asia here, not because they're not important, but it would be difficult to discuss the strategic works. West Asia at one time, a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I wanted to change Middle East into West Asia. I proposed that in Dubai because I saw Saudi Arabia prince doing very positive things. But after this Hamas, Israel incidents, in October 2 years ago, I think we should not include West Asia in our discussion. Another aspect is about, are we talking about Asia or Asian? There's a distinction there. Asian meaning people, and people based, their people development are mainly from river basin. Asia is such a big continent. So there are different river basin and therefore different people. So the views about, I remember way back 40 years ago, I was in Japan and one professor from Japan said, Japanese, we are in Asia, but we're not Asian. I didn't know what he meant. And also, when we talked about East Asia and South Asia, there's always debate about, are we the same or are we different? My friend Edward Chen, some of you will know, he differentiated between the two. You know, he said East Asia is a chopstick culture. West Asia is a finger culture. So they're not the same. Chopstick culture needs skill to operate chopstick. Fingers culture don't need anything to operate fingers because fingers operate naturally by instinct. Then you have another problem about Southeast Asia. Singapore say they are in Southeast Asia, but they're not Southeast Asian. So my view is that let's not argue about this. Let's just talk in general about Asia as a whole and accept the fact that we are together in this so-called global order or global disorder. Let me, in order to come to the conclusion about what should be the kind of role that we play, let's review what happened. What happened in the last 40, 50, 60 years, 80 years. What happened in brief. We experienced recently meaning perhaps the last 20 years, I would consider this a very good global order achieved after something like 50, 60 years of effort. Definition of this so-called global order that we enjoy for a while until maybe 10 years ago, we started to begin whether that would go on. First is liberal mission. That's effort for democratic, to promote more democracy, to promote human rights, a lot of support about human rights and so on. There's picture showing some of this effort. That's the first one. Liberal order, honoring human rights and people. Democracy, depending on how you define it, but at least participation from the people being encouraged. Different from another one that I like very much, that I think many of us in this room, particularly my friends, this is about open economic order. Open economic order, meaning globalized, integrated world market. That has been very obvious from about 2000. Open economic order. The last one, very important also, built over something like 80 years, rule-based multilateralism. People identify common problems and therefore we need solution on a global level, and therefore rule-based multilateralism, meaning institutions and international law. Many institutions established, legal laws and so on being used, established. So those are the kind of very nice global order. I think it signals something like when Francis Fukuyama, when he was seeing that, he said it was the end of history, meaning that people are not fighting anymore. He was too naive, to draw that kind of conclusion. He should know that people always fight. Otherwise, they would not be called people. How did that come about? How did that global order come about? We have to honor the US. It's the US leadership in this construction of this global order. Conspicuously absent in this room is a US participant. Usually in the past, we always have American participating in international conferences. This shows something about what US is doing this day. What did the US use in promoting this kind of the kind of global order that I talked about? Number one, they use ideology. Ideology meaning liberal democracy and market capitalism. Promoting that, relying on the fact that knowledge is power. If that knowledge is about the ideology that they support, the idea capitalism that they support, based on what Francis Bacon said, knowledge is power. So they were doing that all over the place, Thailand or Southeast Asia, involved with this ideology works. Second, they use money. Money is always power. You don't need to quote anybody. You ask anyone, you like money, there's no greater love than the love for money. Even in Thailand, we talked about a woman would not want to lose her husband, not even giving her a huge piece of gold. But I bet if that kind of offer, any woman would give up her husband. US use a lot of money and foreign aid. USAID, Voice of America, and all kinds of things. In Thailand, we experience that. Indonesia, Korea, everywhere. Taiwan, we experience this assistance from US. I was the one who was growing up with US money. Education, attending conferences, or whatever. A lot of US money used promoting Dr. Narongchai to promote this global order, particularly during the APEC time. The third one, power, military and weapons. To quote Mao Zedong, power comes from the barrel of a gun. So US used that as the mean to promote global order. What happened? You can see how all of us, actually in this room, how we came to participate and to encourage and to promote this global order. Japan started earlier. I did not know whether that was a choice, but because of the end of the war and how the war ended, that was how General MacArthur did to Japan. So Japan was the first one. And Japan did very well, very successful. Next group is Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and later on you may put in Singapore, you know, the newly industrializing economies following this kind of global order, open trade, open investment, and so on. In the 1950s, they became the first group of newly industrializing economies. 1960s, ASEAN came along, ASEAN 5. ASEAN was actually, I would not use the word setup, but behind the scenes setup, you know, supporting the setup by the US. Starting from Sito, they engineered coup d'etat in Thailand, 1957. They supported Indonesia, Suharto, you know, and so on. They're always all behind the scene, the American. And we finally, in 1967, we set up ASEAN 5. China came along 1978. Partly because of the rivalry between China and Russia at the end of the Vietnam War. Nixon came along, followed by Carter. Carter suggested that China should be the only one China and member of UN and so on. And Mao Zedong passed away, Deng Xiaoping came to be in power. So China came along in 1978 and supporting this. I recall the time when we were promoting APEC. China was very supportive of creating APEC as an open regionalism, as a free trade target, and so on. Luckily, that period, the world had important leaders for this so-called global order. US had Ronald Reagan, happened to be at the same time as Margaret Thatcher, liberal order, and happened to be coinciding with Gorbachev, you know, Perestroika, Glasnost, and so on. You remember the man with the map on his forehead. You know, so he's a very global man because of that map on his forehead. 1990s, ASEAN became ASEAN 10. After all kinds of problems in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, and so on, ASEAN became ASEAN 10, now ASEAN 11. ASEAN, AFTA, and so on, you know, internationalized, open economy. 1990s, India came along. I think maybe this is the reason why the Indian friend just joined this forum, because India came along to the so-called open economic order in 1991, only 1991. Before that, Nehru would say that capitalism is a form of colonialism, and therefore no India, no India. I remember visiting India in 1970s, 1980s. I could not find anything that I could buy, that I should buy and could buy. It's impossible, you know, unlike India today. As an example, today I'm wearing Indian-made shoes, very comfortable, very nice. So they see how far India has come along. I used to wear Japanese shoes and now Indian shoes. Other South Asia, they're trying to come along. Different countries. I think Bangladesh may be next. Pakistan, because of problem with India, they're not as open, but I'm sure they will be part of it. What after participation by these Asian countries? We have institutions, World Bank, IMF, from Bretton Woods, UN family of institutions, so many UN family of institutions. WTO in 1994. ASEAN, as I said before, became 11 by the year 2025. We can have our open trade among us. APEC from 1989 with the first summit in 1993. Very happy moment, you know, when they could get together during those periods. I remember in 2003 when Thailand hosted APEC, everyone was so happy, particularly Putin. Putin was a young man at the time, you know, he was very popular in Thailand. And today, I don't know whether he's as popular, but at that time, he was a very nice man. ASEP from 2020, so on and so on. We have many institutions, global institutions built over this period of time. Then the results of the so-called it's so obvious. You know that we all benefit from this global Asia, benefit from the global order. Look at GDP. This is IMF statistic, you know, the West Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia GDP, how it's been rising. Look at trade value. It's been rising. Thailand, when I was Minister of Commerce, I was working so hard to achieve 50 billion export. Today, about 300 billion. Vietnam, I think, may be bigger than 300 billion now. So it's amazing, you know, the trade value, trade volume gone way and way up. But the problem is trade balance. Big positive trade balance enjoyed by us, particularly China. At the time, it was US deficit. US deficit. That caused the problem in the US, made them angry. You know, how come you guys in Asia are making so much money and we seem to be having this deficit and no correction? Started this question about the global order benefit that US get. And we experienced major events that made America angry. You know, after the Second World War, the US behaved in Thailand, we call it ugly American. Later on, after Kennedy, we call benevolent American. Then now, they become sulky American or angry American. What made them angry? The first one is this World Trade Center 9/11 incidents, creating the security issue, making us very difficult to travel this day. I used to fly a lot, you know, without having to go through security. Now it's a big burden after that incident. And some of us in 2008, some of us formed what is known as BRIC, global, that create what we call global power rivalry. If you remember the word Thucydides, by the Greek Sparta, you know, the fear of number two rising to take over position of number one. So that BRIC was the beginning of this rivalry, repeated by the US financial crisis in 2008, 2009. So even the US could have financial crisis. It's supposed to be very rich, very non-vulnerable, but they have financial crisis. Actually, that incident saved by a lot by East Asia, by China, to minimize the crisis. That's why we had Donald Trump in 2017. That's how he came along with the slogan, "Make America Great Again." But actually, the slogan should be, "Make America the only great one," not "Make America Great Again." What he meant was the only one. 2022, this Russia-Ukraine war started in February, challenging what is known as national sovereignty that we all supposed to honor at the United Nations. We are supposed to honor this Westphalia Treaty. We should not, you know, take over land or move into other territory and so on. That challenging this sovereign issue about national sovereignty. Starting, you see, you don't have order now, you're beginning to have disorder. And 2025, Donald Trump came again. Somewhat unexpectedly, but looking back, maybe not unexpectedly. Maybe you should blame Biden for it. what he's using now. Earlier, we talked about weapon missiles. Now he's using tariff lines instead of ballistic missiles. This is my phrase. I invented this one. Everywhere he goes, everywhere he went, he used a tariff line, including being in ASEAN 2 weeks ago, used a tariff line instead of ballistic missiles. So this is, we are at that point now, do we call it global order, global disorder? I think both. But my view is, what should we do? What should we do among us, Asia? And I think that's a session this afternoon. So I'd like to share with you my views about this. First, number one, I like to quote Robert Lighthizer. He said this in Hong Kong at a meeting we had with him at AIA. He said, global order failed the US. What a strong statement. He should say the US failed in the global order created by the US, but he said global order failed the US, meaning blaming US problems on the global order created by the US. And he said, if you remember, you know this name. He was the USTR, head of USTR under Trump 1. And the current head of USTR under Trump 2 is his deputy. So they are the same team. You know, these men, these guys, some of them looking strange, surrounding Trump. They are the same gang. Oh, sorry, same team, not the same gang. Some of them look like gangster rather than minister. But anyway, he said, this position will go on for at least the next 5 years. This attitude, this policy that global order failed the US, meaning implying that US will not participate. You see, obvious Brazil COP30 starting now, no US representative. It would happen in other areas too. You look at WTO, you know, the judiciary, the member must have US present. No, not appointed under Trump 1. Today, still not appointed. If WTO cannot make decision about trade problem, what can WTO do, you see? So this is the fact of life. Don't expect anything positive from the US during the next few years. Meaning, therefore, the existing institutions are weakening because the US are paying a lot of money to support these institutions. They're all weakening. Now, the word we are using, known as what many people call transactional and multipolar power practicing. Transactional, making a deal, to use a Donald Trump word. Transactional and multipolar practicing. In addition to existing institution weakening, we have transactional and multipolar power practicing. This is the way of things from now on, going on. It has been going on like this for a few months now. What should we do? I myself feel that Asia wealth and power can support global institutions and rules. We are much richer than before. I recall 1950s, 60s, 70s, we could not do anything without US money. Now we can do a lot of things paying for ourselves. I've been working, supporting Mekong Institute, cooperation among Greater Mekong sub-region. We had a conference a few months ago. We had funding more than enough and nothing, not $1 from the US. So we can do. We can pay for a lot of these things. And then maybe somewhat, we have taken too much advantage of international institutions. I think we should pay more. China, Japan, Korea, they can manage this capital, global industry 4.0, by innovation. It's so obvious how Japan, China, Korea been innovating, coming up with products, better technology, more efficient, cheaper, saving costs, and so on. So they can definitely do that. South Asia, especially India, will be the major economically enforcement. I all see positive side coming from India all the time. And what I like the most is the GIO app by Reliance. I think our Indian friend can explain to you later on about the power of the GIO app, GIO Shiva app. One app, they can do anything, you know, China, Alibaba, India, GIO app, and people have access and they can do lots and lots of things at a very low cost. That's why you see Indian economy coming along quickly. That's why you see a lot of Indian visitors into Thailand, tourist sector. So definitely India, major economic enforcement. ASEAN centrality would help solidify Asia's strength. We have to keep that. ASEAN centrality would solidify Asia's strength. So the conclusion, and then I'd like to raise some questions for discussion later on. I think global order with certain reshaping will prevail, despite the US under Donald Trump not conforming. But then we have to ask the question, can we do it? Do we have leaders to do it? Do we have leaders to do it? Because it's global orders, a lot depend upon who is the leader. I looked at India, Modi, Prime Minister from 2014, 10, 11 years. He does not look tired yet. Our Indian friend can confirm. And if he's tired, is that the next person? China, Xi Jinping, from 2013. To me, I think he looks a bit fed up. You know, I always monitor body language. Especially when he was talking to Donald Trump a week ago in Korea. Donald Trump was, you know, too close to his cheek. And you know how are we Asian? We're really sensitive about our body, you know. Unlike Western people, they like to do hugging, kissing, and all that. You know, man to man, you know, whispering to the ears. Oh, I feel sorry for Xi Jinping. You know, so, but China, the system is that they always come up with good leader. After Xi Jinping, maybe yes. Japan, we have the Takaichi. She was enjoying herself, you know, during the last 2 weeks, appearing in the news. Can she lead Japan as Japan used to do the leading role, used to play the leading role in the past? I also question ASEAN. You know, I say ASEAN, yes. ASEAN centrality, yes. Indonesia, Prabowo, we have Indonesian friend here. You know. Is he, can he, including Philippines, Marcos, the junior. Most of them have what I call the burden of history. Prabowo from Suharto time, Marcos from his father time. And Deputy President, you know, Prabowo, he has not appeared in the news at all. I don't know what was doing. Deputy President of Marcos appear all the time, but fighting with President. What a strange system, you know, President and Vice President being in different camps. Thailand, don't expect Thailand. We'll be too busy with our domestic politics for the next few years. So I leave this to you that I may be too ambitious, too positive about global order with certain reshaping will prevail despite the US under Donald Trump not conforming. That we Asia can help doing this, but we need leaders, and we need technical know-how, technology, knowledge, and so on, to support our leaders in reshaping the global order, but keeping multilateralism, keeping open the economic order, and you know, human rights and so on, in the best shape as best as possible. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Narongchai, for your insightful remarks. We will now take a short health break before continuing with the next session. For our distinguished speakers and panelists, may I please invite you to proceed outside to the main staircase of the hotel by the mural for the official group session. And everyone else is welcome to enjoy refreshment during this break. And then we will reconvene at 10 a.m. for session 1 on technology, rivalry, and digital transformation. Thank you. is titled Technology Rivalry, Reevaluation of Digital Transformation and Innovation. This session will be moderated by Dr. Joseph Yap from the Philippines. And we are honored to have the following panelists: Dr. Wo Tri Tan, Dr. Sachin Kumar Sharma, Dr. Somkiat Tankit Wanit, and Dr. Jose Rizal Damuri. We'll start with the opening perspective.
Good morning. At the onset, I would like to express my condolences to the people of the Kingdom of Thailand for the passing of the Queen, the recent passing. I am much honored again to be invited by the Japan Economic Foundation to the Asia Pacific Forum. So the first session is titled Technology Rivalry, Reevaluation of Digital Transformation and Innovation. I prepared 2 slides just to set the tone. Okay. The issues that are involved and then the possible responses of developing economies. Yes. Okay. Oh, no. My 1 minute is running short. Oh, that's what Jose says. That's Jose. It says JEF. Anyway, the areas actually include, the areas of rivalry are artificial intelligence, semiconductors and microelectronics, advanced computing, connectivity infrastructure, and sensors and other components. The strategies that are the options for developing economies include pragmatic multi-alignment, which is hedging. Dr. Vo later will have an interesting term for that. So you try to, developing economies have to find a sweet spot where they don't antagonize the more advanced economies. The second possible strategy is to boost their domestic capabilities and innovation. And then they have different policies to try to implement that, investing in R&D and education, developing local infrastructure, and tailoring technology to local needs. And then a third general approach would be to implement industrial policy and strategic autonomy. This is a bit tricky because industrial policy, as you know, is a two-edged sword. It might lead to complacency, but at the same time, it opens avenues and channels by which domestic firms can latch on to global value chains. And then finally, fostering regional and global cooperation. Kun Narongchai had a very interesting viewpoint on how to go about fostering and global cooperation. So without much further ado, may I call on the first speaker. Their biographical notes are available to everyone. I won't describe their important tasks. So may I call on Dr. Vo Tri Tan of Vietnam. Okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Can you show my slide? Okay. I have some slide. Basically, my approach, we look at that issues in a broader context. The next, please. Okay. The reason is that now interaction or interplay between geopolitics, security, technology, and economics become much more complex. And behind us, we know there's about uncertainty, a lot of challenges, but also opportunities, right? Next, please. Okay, so the key question: how do we small economies respond to that, right? Including in terms of technology development and innovation. So two things we are now should focus on. One is to strengthen our security, economic security, and resilience. What we mean by that, there's ability to stabilize our economy against any kind of shock and defense ourselves from coercion by other states. And another thing, maybe more important, right, to create a new way of growth and development. And the key thing is how we can catch up with the digital and green transformation for sustainable, inclusive, and innovative development. And somehow ASEAN Community Vision 2045 and even Vietnam aspiration reflect that one, right? In the case Vietnam, we would like to become over the next 20 years, develop a high income economy. And not just that, we would like to have net zero emission by 2050. Next, please. Okay, what's about the policy framework? And that's so far we can observe, right? One is coping with and adapting to volatile changing world. We try to support multilateralism, open regionalism, strengthening ASEAN centrality. And here, I think many new ideas for ASEAN centrality, but one thing is maybe ASEAN to be a forum for mode of flexible cooperation with pathfinder approach and concerted unilateralism. And according to many kind of simulation, you know, about the impact of Donald Trump trade policy on ASEAN, they have conclusion that ASEAN and on ASEAN member, that's important to maintain a neutral stand. And that not only for ASEAN economy, but also for the world. Right. Another thing is, of course, we need to realize FTA we have so far, but also we need to upgrade the kind of, for example, ASEAN plus one FTA, like China, ASEAN, and many other ASEAN FTA. And right now, we also have a new ideas for collaboration, right? Particularly in the case of development of circular economy, digital transformation, right? Macro economic stabilization, and also the development of social safety net also very important. And here, I think regional cooperation kind of for food security, electricity trade, also very crucial for, you know, ASEAN and on maybe East Asia. Next, please. And that already, you know, Dr. Yap mentioned upgrading is establishing nation capability, right? One is realizing industry policy, particularly for the so-called strategic industry sector, semiconductor, AI, you know, like that, data center development. And another thing is reforming economic institution, improving business environment. And for example, in the case of Vietnam, since the year 2000, we shift to the new FDI strategy, attraction FDI strategy. We focus not just on money, we now focus on the quality investment, quality FDI, right? Particularly in terms of spillover effect on the local firm, SME and technology transfer. Okay, of course, infrastructure also important. And last but not least, that's about innovation and R&D capability, right? Legal framework, a breakthrough policy for R&D, and focus on the so-called the key, technology, right? And reforming education training system. Next, please. And on that, you can see the reflect in the new resolution of our party, and also in the report at the next party congress in the January next year, right? One thing I would like to say is that we now pick up some of the key technology for development: AI, semiconductor, biology, new material, clean energy, space, and peaceful nuclear, right? We now in the process preparing to have 2 nuclear power in the center of Vietnam, right? And we have the new terms, the so-called technology sovereignty, right? As ensure that. Other thing already mentioned, policy, education, the training, human resource development, a breakthrough policy for R&D or whatever, including international cooperation. And the last, my slide. Next, please. Okay, that's one. Okay. Okay. The last, my. Okay, sorry. Yes. Okay, the last very crucial, there's the challenges. I think we have the 4 issues. The first one, don't choose side. We don't pick up the side, right? We try to balance between the power. But the thing is how we can avoid the stuck position in relation with the superpower, with China and US. That's one thing. Another issue is there's interaction between security, economic kind of resilient, self-reliance, with deep integration. How we can have appropriate industrial policy, less distorted industrial policy and compliance with the international commitment. Another issues and challenges, there's the role of the state, market, international cooperation in promoting innovation and technology, particularly core technology. And last but not least, we have multiple objectives. Transaction costs quite high, particularly for digital transformation and green transformation. Why we have very limited resources. So I think that's the 4 the key issues and challenges. So I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vo. So the main message is neutrality, but you have to be strategic in your neutrality. Okay, so Dr. Sachin, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you very much for making me member of this STEAM group. And thank you very much. This is my first time to this series of event. And I really would like to thank Japan Economic Foundation for the invitation. And also, really, I'm impressed with the morning keynote address. It's really fantastic. And thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Vo, for highlighting about the national capacity point that I would also emphasize in my intervention. So I don't have any PowerPoint. I'll just go through my I'm sorry. I just started again. As I reflect on my own experience from working on WTO agriculture trade issues to now leading a policy think tank deeply engaged in South-South cooperation, one truth is obvious. Technology has become the new grammar of global diplomacy. Earlier, technology helped us trade faster and communicate better, but today it defines who leads, who follows, and who is left behind. The digital age is no longer about convenience. It is about sovereignty. Chips, codes, and data now shape power as much as oil and steel. We are living through a technology cold war, a rivalry that is reshaping the global order. The US and China are racing to dominate semiconductor, AI, quantum computing, and telecom network. This is no longer just about innovation, it is about influence. And in this race, all the distinguished policymaker expert in this room must ask, will we be producer of innovation or mere consumer of other countries' technology? I have seen this anxiety firsthand across continent at the WTO as well, where developing countries seek to secure their digital future without closing themselves off. Every major power has chosen its path. The US is seeking to maintain technology supremacy through export control, alliance, and major domestic investment like CHIPS and Science Act. China pursue a dual strategy of technological self-reliance like Made in China 2025 and global digital infrastructure expansion via its digital Silk Road. The European Union emphasized digital sovereignty through regulatory assertiveness, and India through its digital public infrastructure shows that openness and self-reliance can coexist. UPI dominates India's digital payment landscape, recording over 20 billion transactions only in month of October itself, averaging nearly 700 million transactions every day. These are not just numbers. They reflect the confidence and convenience that digital inclusion has brought into the daily lives of ordinary citizens. Just last week in Lisbon, I was in Lisbon, I met policymakers, civil society members, and experts from across region, and I sensed genuine curiosity about India's digital public infrastructure, not as a product to be copied, but as a principle to be adapted. The UPI Pay Now linkage between India and Singapore was not merely a payment bridge, it was a political statement that digital cooperation can move faster than traditional trade negotiations. I also just give some idea about India's digital transformation. It's my own experience, when I travel across Europe, I often notice something interesting. Digital payments are there, yes, but they are not quite a part of everyday life the way they have become in India. Back home, it's almost second nature. Sometimes when I stepped out, I realize I don't even have a single Indian currency on me, and I don't need it. I can pay anyone, anywhere, instantly. That's how deeply technology has changed the way we live. A few months ago, in my hometown, in Rohtak, very small town, I met a vegetable vendor, an elderly woman with a withered smile and a simple smartphone. She told me that her business had doubled because she could now accept UPI payments. That moment stuck with me because it showed what digital India truly means. Not technology for its own sake, but technology that restored dignity and trust. For her, digital transformation was not an abstract concept. It was an empowerment, and it was an inclusion. Across millions of villages, that story is repeating itself. A farmer receiving instant payment for his produce, like PM Kisan, a student applying for scholarship, a mother accessing healthcare This is emotional pulse of India's digital journey, where every click carries a story of confidence. However, the new order is not without challenges. Across the global south, I have heard the same concern. Dependence on imported technology breeds vulnerability. The rise of spill internet, where digital borders harden, threaten open innovation, smaller economy risk being locked out of advanced research and development. To navigate this, we must build resilient innovation ecosystem, invest in domestic research, strengthen regional digital framework, and establish responsible AI governance. Open source digital public goods such as India's DPI can balance innovation with inclusion. And we must think globally. A multilateral digital compact framework, perhaps under the G20 or UN Tech Envoy, could ensure interoperability, ethical oversight, and equitable access. The goal is not to choose sides, but to build bridge of trust. Friends, the global tech rivalry is redefining power. The US wields investment, China wields scale, the EU wields regulation, and India wields openness. Each of these approaches reflects a distinct vision of how technology and power intersect. Yet for India, and perhaps for many of us in the developing world, the real strength lies in openness that empowers, not isolates. Our task is to make openness an instrument of strength. At RIS, we believe the voice of Global South must be digital too, not just in speeches, but built into the system that shape our future. Let us therefore reimagine digital transformation, not as a race for supremacy, but as a collective journey towards shared prosperity. Let us build a future where every country codes its own destiny, where technology connects rather than divide, and where digital transformation becomes a bridge, not a battlefield. Thank you very much for your patience. And I'm sorry, Chair, I exceed the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sachin. Indeed, digitalization is the way of the future. But this is an area where regional cooperation or even global cooperation is important, particularly in terms of data sharing and cybersecurity that will enable us to build that bridge of trust. So we now go to the discussants. I'm sure Dr. Somkat has a lot to say about this because you chose the theme. So Dr. Somkat, please.
Okay, thank you. I chose the theme because I used to be an engineer studying in technology field before moving to public policy. So I share a bit of my thoughts. Maybe I am a bit too visionary. I studied artificial intelligence 30 years ago. So my knowledge has already become outdated. On technology rivalry, I think the first speaker, Dr. Wo, has mentioned a very important point that we should not choose sides. We should be strategically neutral. That's a very good keyword, I think. But the devil is always in the detail, how to behave strategically and be neutral at the same time. So I divide my analysis into two points. The first one as technology producer, the second one as technology adopter. For technology producers, Southeast Asian countries is not at the center of strategic competition between over critical technology between the US and China. So it's not a hard choice. We just join the supply chain here. Southeast Asia generally is at the peripheral. So we receive FDIs mainly from East Asia, from China, from Taiwan, from Japan, from Korea in the critical technology area. But we are not the one who really dealing with the critical technology. For example, a lot of foreign direct investment that flow into Thailand last year and this year is related to advanced PCB, which is not part of the, not the advanced chip, but the advanced PCB. So we can join the supply chain. and does not feel any threat of being choosing side, because the US are not in this area anyway. So that's not a big deal. So the issue is that we should upgrade our innovation capability and our people skill so that we can reap more benefits from joining the global supply chain. That's quite a straightforward one. A more tricky issue would be on as technology user. The first issue in my point of view is that we have to choose standards, and that can be a problem sometimes. In certain areas like payment, as Dr. Sharma has mentioned, it's not a real issue. In Southeast Asia and in this part of the world, we already have QR payment. In Thailand, we can connect now with Singapore, Malaysia, thanks to the work of the Bank of Thailand and other central banks in the region. And we have just recently connect with QR payment in China. So this is an easy one because there are some adapter that connects multiple standards to work together. For choosing certain things like video, like a streaming platform, this is also not a big deal. We can adopt both, iQIYI from China and Netflix from the US without any difficulties because we are just consumers. When it becomes something like video conference, it will be more problematic. I have talked to one businessman, a CEO of one large company, who would like to do business with China during COVID time. The China partner insists that you have to use, Tencent apps. The Thai side insists that no, we are going to use Team. So there are difficulties. The difficulties arise from the fact that the US and China, the West and China, are suspicious of one another of putting spyware into the video conference system. So the solution in that case is that the Thai businessman install the Chinese apps into another isolated computer to make it secure. So it's not a big deal. But the things will become much more trickier still in terms of, choosing the future standards of mobile phone. We now carry our 4G and 5G mobile phone anywhere in the world, and it's compatible. It's usable only one mobile phone handset. But the 6G standards has not been set yet, and China is moving in one direction. The West is moving another direction. So the case that we might see in the future may return to the case of 3G mobile phone. When we go to Japan, we have to, stop at Narita, rental one mobile phone, go to the US using another handset, things like that. So it's become quite burdensome. And it will be very, very difficult to choose something like global positioning system, like the GPS, the US standard released by DARPA, the Defense Department in the past, or choosing the China-led Pareto system, which are not compatible. And it can have a lot of implications for a lot of things like car navigation, defense. You cannot use both. Well, you can use, but it will be much more expensive that way. So this is the tricky issue, how to strategically stay neutral by choosing the right standard. So it's not a simple one. And another issue is that you have to be aware of, even as a user, there are certain critical technology which are deemed to be, have to be handled with great care by the US administration, something like NVIDIA advanced chip. So there are cases in Malaysia and Singapore that NVIDIA chips are supposed to be imported to use in Singapore and Malaysia, but were smuggled and re-export to China when the Chinese are banned from using those kind of chips. So these are the issues that countries in Southeast Asia have to be very, very, very aware of. So that's my point to sharpen the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Somkat. Maybe just to put it in one word, the issue is interoperability. And perhaps in order to create that interface, we think of a WTO for digitalization. But anyway, that's easier said than done. So, Pak Yose, you're up next.
Okay.
You have the floor.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the JEF and TDRI for inviting me again to this very esteemed forum. This is, I think, my 10th or 11th participating in these forums, and I really appreciate every time I get the invitations from GIF for this Asia Pacific Forum. As a last speaker, I think a lot that has been said by other speakers, well, I just want to share some issues, especially related to the geopolitical and geoeconomic sides of this technological rivalry. When we're talking about technological rivalry, I think one of a very important moment, it was on the October 4th, 1957. I don't know whether you know what happens at that time. I was not born yet, but Kun Narongsai perhaps remember that at that time, at that date, the Soviet Union launched the Sputnik, the first satellite that the human being ever made, and it created a lot of panic in the U.S. Big panic, huge response from the U.S. that started the technological rivalry that made the humanity can land in the on the moons in 1969, and eventually it also led to the inventions of the internet and artificial intelligence as we have right now. This is just to show that technological rivalry also brings benefit, which is beneficial to all of us and to technological advancements. But of course, it has to be more controllable. The current situation seems to be in the downside rates rather than will brings benefits to the human developments. Over the past 2 years, just for examples, the United States tightened export control on high-end chips and chip-making tools. Japan also aligns with the new licensing of 23 categories of semiconductor equipment. China answered it with the export curbs on gallium, germanium, and many other critical minerals and rare earth. There's signaling that the restrictions instead of the advancements play important roles in technological rivalry currently. But of course, on the other hand, we also seen that how global solar module and panels prices have fallen sharply, helping the very increasing installations. In 2023, for example, 430 gigawatts have added to the renewable energy around the world. So although it again it creates a defensive tariff elsewhere, and also might stress the supply chains of those necessary renewable energy equipments. Well, so I agree with Dr. Fo, Dr. Yap, and also other speakers that this technology rivalry is not only about technology, but also about geopolitics and geoeconomic interests. However, responses from emerging economies, including among ASEAN countries, remain to be not strategic enough, in my opinions. They still see the dynamics as from the perspective business as usual. Dr. Fo mentions and explains about ASEAN Economic Community Vision 2045 and AEC strategic plan. The document is very good. They are very good. But if you look at it, it does not sufficiently acknowledge the interplay between economics and geopolitics. It still see the situation as business as usual, including also on this technological rivalry. ASEAN remains to work in silo, while what we need is to have more comprehensive and strategic approach, while at the same time to do it also more cohesively together, collaboratively. Without more strategic and cohesive approach, ASEAN countries can easily be trapped in this technological rivalry. Dr. Somkiat rightly mentions that we are not really in the current in the core of the current turbulence, but we can easily be trapped into it, and we're going to have a very big big challenge if we don't do it strategically or respond strategically. Take, for example, the agreements the US signed with some ASEAN countries 2 weeks ago. This agreement don't just about cutting tariff. It's also defined the choices of technology governance for those ASEAN economies. For example, Malaysia accept US leaning package on digital trade, cross-border data flow with no restrictions and so on, no digital service tax, for example, or economic security alignment, including cooperations on export control and investments. And all this set precedents also to other countries in these regions, limiting the choice for technology patchwork that the region has, while risking undermining ASEAN centrality or even ASEAN unity. All right. So against ASEAN's also realized this kind of strategic response, and while Khun Rengchai questions the leadership in saving global order before, I think for smaller economies in Southeast Asian countries, more immediate question is how to have strategic response to the current global dynamics, including also in this technological rivalry. Because developing and emerging economies have different objectives and strategies and focus areas than the more advanced economies. I try to put it on a slide. Actually, can you present my slide? If you can see that there are several differences, quite significant differences that we have to look at when we're talking about the advanced economies and also developing economies. So I know that Dr. Yap already gave me warnings that I exceed my times. But before I conclude, I'd like to stress again the importance of these emerging economies, especially in Southeast Asia, in ASEAN, to have strategic, comprehensive cross-pillar response to this technological rivalry. The ASEAN also already have the so-called ASEAN Geoeconomic Task Force. I happen to be involved quite actively in this task force, but the task force really need to have a support, real support from from the economies in ASEAN as well as in Greater East Asia to work together and to come up with a more concrete, real strategic response to this region. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pak Yose. Actually, you did me a favor by summarizing the discussion up to this point. Before we go to the Q&A session, can I request a response from the two speakers? So a brief response. Dr. Vo, please.
Thank you, Somkiat and yours. I not just kind of respond to your whatever I listen to, but I show you the case of Vietnam, right? That's not easy. You just say that user, producer, or standard, right? That's no secret. We and US are comprehensive strategic partners. But at the same time, US continue to list Vietnam in the Group D. That means restriction on technology export. So that's why that in May we have a workshop on how we respond to reciprocal tariff, right? So in the case of Vietnam, not just about tariff, transshipment, but one of the key issues we now just have framework for reciprocal trade policy with US, but we continue to negotiate with the US. And one of the key things is how we can be dealing with NTBs, NTM, right? Measure, concerned by the US. So that's why we have the new decree, legal framework, and that's focused on IPRs, technology transfer in terms of you involved in the supply chain, rule of origin, transparency, and many other, right? Very difficult. So, kind of because if you look at the Vietnam, we use a lot of input from China and something from Korea, and at the same time, our export to US, right? And among the East Asia, except China, we have a huge surplus, more than 100 billion US dollar with the US in trade. So, the thing is more complex. That's why I say, okay, we try balance about how we can avoid a stuck position, the relation between US, China. That's, depends on your diplomacy and the way. Balance not mean you divide everything by two, right? Not everything by two. We have cooperation military with the US, but somehow, more limited with China. That's not so bad, but otherwise. The case of yours, I agree with you. If we look at the ASEAN Vision 2045, that's about ASEAN development, the whole thing. But we have our strategy for the next 5 years for the ASEAN economic community, not the security community, no social. So that's why, kind of how we can put everything together. That's still the question of ASEAN. But at the same time, come back to the comment that's by Narumcha, the leader of ASEAN integration. There's very much for ASEAN centrality, for the how we can continue to keep the key principle of ASEAN, ASEAN consensus with flexibility, right? We already have 10-H on the thing, but how that works, I stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vo. Dr. Sachi, your response, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, both the discussion, and it's really very good points you have mentioned. One or two things, yes, we can't deny that about enhancing the national capacity on the technology. That is the one important point. But one point which Dr. Yos have mentioned about the US and the deal amongst some of the ASEAN countries. One or 2 points. These are not about only reducing the tariff that was going on the discussion. It's also about the policy space on the technology front as well. If we do, there are a lot of contentious issues are there. The data flow is there. A lot of issues are, data sovereignty is there. And second, we also wanted to enhance our domestic capacity on the technology front as well. So there, and the context in different countries very different. So need some flexibility and policy space to implement those policies which are compatible with the prevailing socioeconomic situation of that country. So in terms of the tariff deal, what is happening at the moment, we also need to see that in the future, whether we are binding ourselves, whether it was going to curtail the policy space for future. So these are the very extremely point, and this is where is my personal view. We need to be very cautious about this thing. Yes, there no doubt there need to be technology cooperation among the other countries, but we also need to see the policy space among the countries, so that they can also promote their or enhance their domestic capacity as well. This is a specific and brief point, and thank you for the nice point, and many of the points I agree with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sachin. We now open the floor to our colleagues who are online. Ms. Mia, would you have a question for the panel?
Not really, not really. Well, maybe one really, because you know, often the whole issue of tensions in the global system boiled down to the problems with trade balances and the trade in goods, etc. But through this session, I think it is quite obvious that it is more about technological supremacy and about understanding that there are some other players in the global system related to technology that were not expected to rise as quickly as they did. And so I would want to ask about Asian readiness, and more so Southeast Asia readiness, to play a more active part in that game about technological supremacy, because it's not only digital technology. There are some other technologies that need to be taken into account, and how will that link back, if you talk about artificial intelligence or more about military type of technology, how will that relate back to the development strategies of Southeast Asia? So that's my question to any of the speakers or discussants that may want to develop on that.
Okay, thank you. Can you? No. I'll open the session to the others after we deal with our online colleagues. Would anyone want to among the floor? Would you? Okay, yeah, briefly, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mia. One thing I confess that she was also my mentor for a long time. I only know in this room only Dr. Mia before I joined this. And one thing I not changed, though technology has changed, but Dr. Mia has not changed. This is the one thing. Okay, about the specific about the readiness, my just simple point that in terms of India, what I can share about India is to enhance the domestic capacity as well as for South-South cooperation. India is taking a lot of steps in terms of artificial intelligence. We are sharing our knowledge through one platform, what we call Dakshin, Voice of Global South, through which we are trying to share the knowledge and learn from each other countries as well. So the government, in terms of not only the digital, but also for solar, semiconductor, the government has been taking a lot of steps. We have different missions and policy, as well as incentives to enhance the capacity at the domestic front. And through the collaboration with the different countries, we are trying to ready ourselves for this kind of situation. Yes, but it's a very long road. We are taking a small steps, but yes, cooperation from different Asian countries also very important. And through RIS, we will go deep into it and how we can make it more effective. That's just brief from my point of view. Thank you.
Okay, a rejoinder, please, Dr. Mia.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sorry to be, no, I'm just referring also to the latest conversations between leaders in Southeast Asia and APEC more generally, and with the commitment of many Asian countries with respect to providing direct investment in technology-related sectors in the United States. And so how will that impact this readiness and ability of Asia to actually move forward in these technological developments, given that quite a bit of investment will be derailed outside their national economies. And apologies for having a second question.
Dr. Sompiat, please.
I think we have to divide Asia, not as many as Dr. Narongchai has divided in the morning session, but at least to East Asia and Southeast Asia. And the position of East Asia and Southeast Asia are largely different in terms of their technology capability. The East Asia, which include, from my point of view, exclude China for the moment, includes Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. They are leaders in technology development. So they are at the core, at the center of technology supremacy. And they are dragged into the US orbit of, developing critical technology together and invest in the US. Like Taiwan TSMC have to invest in the US to enjoy the market there, for example. And TSMC working with Japan in Kyushu to develop chips. And Japan also have its own company, Rapidus, in Hokkaido to develop state-of-the-art 2 nanometer chip, something like that. But Southeast Asia is totally different. We are at the periphery. So we are, PCB, advanced chip, packaging, testing, that kind of thing. And it's basically, in terms of AI, I think all are facing the same situation. Developing state-of-the-art AI is hugely expensive. So it's not at least not the Thailand strategy to go into that direction. Our strategy is to use AI technology, generative AI in particular, to increase productivity of our production sector, like agriculture, service, manufacturing, medical service, for example. We use AI. There are startups and some academic institutions that use medical image to train AI to, for example, for mammogram analysis, because we cannot use Western developed technology to analyze Southeast Asia women breast, because the size is different, the density is different. So we have to develop our own technology. So I think the strategy is adoption and increase productivity rather than rest to technological supremacy.
Can I have just 1 minute?
Yeah, if I may briefly, ASEAN countries actually already have this kind of strategy. Like, for example, so on digital part, the digital economic framework, digital economy framework agreements that currently are still under negotiation, try to set the course for ASEAN's economies. But the thing is, how those DEFA can also include this technological rivalry into that negotiations, because it seems that many ASEAN countries are still reluctant about how to acknowledge the interlinkage, the interplay between geopolitical issues and economic issues, while the current turbulence, it's about geopolitical, those interplay.
Just 1 minute about the cooperation, right, in East Asia at least. Yeah, I agree with Sompiat, the level of technology development in the Northeast Asia, and Southeast Asia different. But here we can find the way for cooperation because of aging population, say, Taiwan, Japan, Korea even suffer from that. So even Southeast Asia, a source of, supply of skilled labor in many industries. Even TSMC investment in Japan, maybe they require Vietnamese labor. Of course, training, education, the key. The second, think about supply chains in the future. So far we trade a lot in intermediate goods and final good export to EU and US and somehow to Japan. But I think in 5 or 7 years, East Asia, including ASEAN, have become the new source of global demand, right? So that's when kind of for cooperation.
Thank you. Professor Rata, you went, turned your video on. Do you have a query? You're still on mute.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry that I'm not with you, but I'm in Manila. Dr. Yap, I'm in Manila now. I have just one question. The technology, particularly like AI, and that of course has the benefit as somebody mentioned, but it has also some maybe negative impacts on employment. And in developing countries, there are, many workers and potential workers who may be displaced by the introduction of technology. I just wonder if that is the case in many of the countries that are represented here. Thank you.
Before I turn it over the floor, maybe Ambassador McLean, would you want to join the discussion?
Thank you. Look, I don't have a photograph. Somehow or other, my camera's not working, but I'll reserve my comments till the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Professor Murata has, no, I'll finish first our colleagues from outside, online colleagues. The displacement of workers, would you have a question? Yeah.
This is a very interesting issue, the issue of AI and automation replacing human and make high unemployment out of the economy. So there are debates long time ago and still being debated between technologists who believe that very soon, and they just released a news as of today that AI has more or less reached so-called level of artificial general intelligence, in a sense that it can do so many things and surpass human capability and can replace human very easily. On the other hand, economists seem to believe that it will take a lot of time for this kind of general purpose technology to really come into full adoption and have big impacts on employment. For example, electricity has been in place since Edison, and Tesla has invented the lamps and also the power transmission system. But it will take a long time to adapt the whole institution, redesign the workplace, the process to adopt that kind of technology. So impact will come, but it will be quite far away. So in this sense, both economies and technologies are partly right, but precisely wrong, in the sense that productivity growth and replacement will come, and it will be bigger than economists might expect, but it will be much slower than technologies have expected.
Thank you. Maybe in this context, it would be useful to distinguish between tasks and jobs. So, Professor An, thank you for your patience. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm interested in the impact of digital transformation on the regional trade. According to World Bank and OECD studies now, digital trade occupies roughly 20% of the global total trade. I can see that this rising trend will continue to keep up. 2 years ago, I went to India, Dr. Sharma, and I heard the Prime Minister Modi was saying that the data is India's national wealth. And 1.4 billion, population in India is indeed a great source for India's, becoming a global generic pharmaceutical, manufacturing. I really agree with that point. But now we have another 1.4 billion population across the border, China. And China, they adopted a data localization requirement. Okay? Even multinational investors who are in China, and the data they gained while doing their business operation must stay within the China. They are not allowed to cross the border. I mean, especially for security sensitive, items. So my question is that, we need to promote intra-regional digital trade, especially for small and medium enterprises, okay? So how we should deal with sort of the data localization, requirement, especially by big economies. So in this sense, I would like to ask Dr. Sharma, what is the India's policy on this, and how you evaluate the current China's policy on the data localization requirement? Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sachin, you have a response?
Yes, you spot on. So about the data localization, yes, India's view is also about data localization, because there are a lot of sensitivities are there, but let me confess at the moment, I refrain to make any comment because I'm not expert in that specific thing. So if I say something which at the moment I'm not able to answer, but I will get back on this. But yes, there are sensitivities are there about the data flow issue, because our policy also to some extent about the data localization, but how in FTS we are dealing in now the digital trade issue we are dealing at the moment. At the multilateral level, we are not part of the plurilateral system, but at the moment, I just refrain to comment on this because I don't think that at the moment, I'm able to answer it in a concrete way. Thank you. This is my views.
Can I request the floor to raise your questions? Okay, Dr. Somkat, please. And then
I would like to respond to the very important question about data localization. I think the game changer, one game changer would be FTA with the EU. Indonesia has already concluded the FTA with the EU. Thailand is at the stage of, the final negotiation. And one very important provision in that is the restriction of data localization. So countries like Indonesia and Thailand in the future, and not only the EU FTA, but also the Trump deals also prohibit data localization. So that will be the global standard in the region. But the EU one will have one very important dimension in terms of the standards of cross-border data flow. It have to be something like GDPR compatibility. If the protection of private data is not up to the standard, that's the reason for the restriction of data flow.
Okay, Toyoda-san, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. I think the issues which raised by many people are quite important. But I have a question. As Dr. Naronchai explained to us, we need sort of rule-based approach on trade, not only trade, but on technological development, or I would say industrial policy. Otherwise, localization versus the denying localization. I think, sort of US-Japan or US-China rivalry competition is simply taking place because of lack of rule-based approach. I think to some extent we need a rule-based approach even on technological development. I just like to have a view on that. Thank you.
Or before I go to the other gentlemen, or other questions, would Toyoda-san raise a very important point? Or we just go to your response later. So Datuk, please.
Thank you. I have actually something similar to what Toyoda-san just raised. If you look at the digital transformation, it has the potential to marginalize countries. So I think much more needs to be done to break or reduce the gap of the digital development in the region. I recall those days when e-commerce was the in thing. APEC had economic and technical cooperation programs where there was assistance to bring target numbers in each of the economy to be able to utilize the digital trade platforms. But we have moved away, far away from just pure e-commerce. Today we have got, of course, paperless trading, cybersecurity is an issue, and then we have digital payments. So with all this, I think Toyoda-san's question is really relevant. Do we actually have a set of rules that would govern digital trade, payments, and the whole works? In the TPP, we did some attempt to come up with something on e-commerce, and it was very basic, addressing issues like a moratorium on imposition of tariffs on digital trade. I think in the WTO, that issue is still being discussed. But I think, like we have heard, there's so much of development in the digital area. We really need something that would help to maybe harmonize, digital trade rules. I think Pa Jose mentioned about the DEFA, the Digital Economic Framework Agreement, which ASEAN is currently negotiating. I think that one is something that we must really focus on. Of course, it's starting with ASEAN. If it works out well, maybe it can be extended to the wider community in Asia, or even maybe be the benchmark for global rules, because the projection is that the value or the monetization of this digital area in ASEAN within the next 10 or 20 years is going to reach up to $2 trillion US. So my advocacy here is that I think we should put a lot of emphasis on coming up with a framework rule where there is no moving of the transformation in different tangents. So at least the gap between those who are marginalized and those who are advancing will be narrowed through at least a harmonized kind of or set of rules.
Thank you. Mr. Manu, please. I'm sorry, Ms. Mia, this will be our last question because we have to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is a bit more general. I think Dr. Vo mentioned that we cannot choose between the two big powers. And I think that's a theme that many others agreed with. But what happens if a big power forces the issue, as the US did come very close to in the recent trade deals? What is the optimal stance that a small, vulnerable country takes? Do we say we will pay the price and push back against big power? hoping that in the long term, the big power realizes you cannot bully? Or do you say that we have no choice but to go accede to the big power and be constantly bullied? What's the optimal policy going forward?
My quick response: in unity there is strength. But anyway, for the last part, I will give each speaker and discussant time to respond. Briefly, please. Dr. Vo, please.
Just a few things. One about digital trade, right? I think three things. One is we talk a lot about data flows, right? That's not easy to have agreement, recent one, because we are so different in terms of what we mean by security, tradition, and many other things, privacy. But anyway, I agree. We need to have a kind of framework. Before, Singapore and some countries are already the first mover, and now ASEAN try to have depart, right? But I think in many dimensions, we need to have a kind of step by step, like a sandbox. Even for the QR code, Somkiat mentioned, first some ASEAN country and now Vietnam, so I can pay using Vietnamese dong to pay in Bangkok or whatever using QR code. So that's the way, because we don't know exactly, what the impact on everything. So I think that's a very important. Another one, rule-based technology and for the digital trade. Right now, I think that's the right way for ASEAN and some partner to upgrading FTAs, right? If you look at the case of ASEAN, New Zealand, Australia, and particularly now under negotiation, ASEAN, China. So trade, digital trade is one of the key issues. Of course, some ASEAN countries quite, a little bit careful about that. China also quite more active one. The reason not just about data flow, not just about IPR, but the thing is competition, right? In the digital economy, one principle, the winner take all, right? If you look at the e-commerce, how can you compare to Alibaba, etc. So that's very much we have to think about competition policy, right? Particularly for the digital economy, different rule, different way of thinking about the monopoly and everything, right? And data is a kind of input or production function, and we don't have good enough accounting of the data because of a problem of data ownership, right? So that's on the thing. So step by step, first, even the TPP, we look at e-commerce first, not the digital trade at the broad. That's one. So again, I think competition, data flow, IPR, and step by step, that's also very crucial for. But we need to be active.
Thank you. Dr. Sachin, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the interesting question about the impact of of the AI on employment. Yes, they feared that there would be unemployment, but the way forward, even when I was young in 1990s, when the government, Indian government adopted this the computer system in 1990, there are a lot of protests that even to adopt the computer system. I remember that time, a lot of protests were happened by the government employee. So now AI is inevitable. Now best is that how to adapt it, how to enhance our domestic capacity and skill. That is the way forward. If we remain in the denial mode, it's not going to help. That's the way forward, I think. Second, I totally agree about the rule-based approach. Yes, there need to be, I totally endorse, but the given circumstances at the moment, And the way the WTO at the moment is working, there are big doubts at the moment. I spent my almost whole career till now at the WTO negotiation. For 15 years, I was there in Geneva to negotiate on many of these aspects. This is good for the rule-based approach, but if we are discussing this geopolitical tension and technology rivalry, so about the rule-based approach at the moment, it's good. We need to have that thing if we wanted to move, but given the circumstances, a bit difficult seems. Third point, which being mentioned about harmonization. I agree about the harmonization, but it's also important that when this harmonization is forced by a particular country, then it would be a problematic. That is the problem. There need to be harmonization. Overall, what I said about the earlier question about the data localization or overall discussion, what is need very extremely important is the trust and transparency. That is the required to move forward. If we have the trust, we will agree on many of these points. If we have no trust, then there are issues, we will remain in the fragmented world. So we need to come together, we need to develop trust, and trust will not be by only speaking, but through the governance, as Sir and discussion also mentioned, we need to take a concrete steps towards the governance issue. That's my brief. Thank you very much.
Dr. Somkat, please.
Thank you. I would like to use the time to respond to Toyota very important questions. I don't know how much can I answer that, but I think whether we have a rule-based system for digital trade or not depends on the issue. For easy one like easy one and one with interest of major economies allied, that can be settled, like the one has mentioned before, the memorandum of customs on digital trade, which is set in the WTO already. And the US would like to confirm that in the Trump deal with other countries. And US also would like to add something like no discriminatory tax on digital goods. But for other more complex issue, it will be a lot of time. I guess it will be a long time for the multilateral rule can emerge for that, because technology itself is very complex and evolving very quickly. AI, for example, is not settled down yet. So it's really difficult to pinpoint the best way to regulate that. And when we are going to have multilateral rule, the rule have to come from somewhere before. And it have to be bottom-up approach, have to be de facto rules in place before. Those kind of rules can be set by industry groups or by major economies like the EU. The EU seems to be the leader in the area with its AI Act, with its Digital Service Act, with its Digital Market Act. The Digital Service Act and Digital Market Act has been adopted in many jurisdictions as well. And Thailand is considering adopting similar rules. So let's see how the things evolved.
Okay. Well, I'd like to respond to what Dato mentions about the governance of digital economy. This is, I think, very important in these regions. Not only for the sake of narrowing digital gap and also make sure the benefits are for all, but also for preventing what I normally call the dark side of digital technology. They take, for example, online fraud, financial fraud. It already it reached in 2014, according to Asia Scam Report, it's around $68 billion US. It's a big number. Yeah, around 20% of the online values. So we also need to have this kind of governance. So and I think RCP would happen to have the general review in 27 can becomes a good starting point in order to expand the digital economy along with DeFi as well. And also shortly on Manu remarks about how to respond. I believe that a smaller country need to have more harmonized and cohesive response. Take for examples, ASEAN. None of these ASEAN countries has the definitions of economic security. This is also a chance for ASEAN as an entity to have more harmonized definitions of what constitute the economic security and what can take place to follow or in accordance to the what you call this general security exceptions in the Article 21 WTO. What's really the definition? ASEAN need to have this kind of guideline, including also for technology rivalry.
Thank you very much, Pak Yose. We're 2 minutes over time, but for a very good summary of this session, I recommend that you look at Pak Yose's one slide. That will give you a good idea of what we discussed. I congratulate the speakers and discussants for a very rich and insightful discussion. Please join me in thanking them. Yeah.
We now move to session 2, titled Climate and the Clock, Accelerating a Just Green Transition in Asia. This session will be moderated by Mr. Manu Bhaskaran from Singapore. And the opening perspectives will be delivered by Ambassador Murray McLean and Dr. Aladdin Riro.
So, yes. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to session 2 on accelerating the just green transition in Asia. I'll make some quick opening remarks, open up to the speakers and discussants, and then we'll have a discussion. And I'd like to leave some time at the end for our Thai participants to ask questions as well. And then we'll give each of the speakers and discussants a couple of minutes each to make their concluding remarks. I think a few things can be said just to frame the discussion. First, it is clear that there is indeed a pressing need to accelerate the green transition. According to various sources such as Climate Tracker Asia, heat events in Southeast Asia are becoming more frequent and intense and already causing quite a lot of damage in the form of intense heat, heavier rainfall, rising sea levels, and changes in cyclone patterns. The region has already warmed by about 0.5 degrees centigrade since 1980, and temperatures could rise by 1.1 degrees centigrade under a medium baseline scenario, according to some forecasts. And there's a human cost to this. According to one study, heat-related mortality has already gone up by 61% in Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines since the 1990s. But the trouble is we face challenges in addressing the issue, and they're very fundamental challenges. There are trade-offs that are very difficult between action to address climate change on one side and economic growth or energy security on the other. Resolving these trade-offs is not easy. Second, there is growing global backlash against ESG and all these related issues that affects the approach to climate change policies. The US administration has downplayed climate change, with President Trump calling it a hoax. So how do we deal with this? And finally, financing the transition will be challenging. All over the world, and including our region, governments are faced with limited budgets and growing demands. So how will we finance climate measures? So just a sense of the challenges we face despite the urgent need for action. So what I'll do now is open up to the speakers and invite first Ambassador Murray McLean to make his remarks. Ambassador McLean, please.
Thank you very much indeed. And once again, apologies for my computer camera not linking in. My appreciation very much goes to both the Japan Economic Foundation and the Thai Development Research Institute for organising this year's conference once again, and I'm honoured once again to be a participant. As you've just said, Manu, the climate change remains the most challenging global issue today, or at least that's what many people think, and I certainly am one of those. As the scale and ferocity of national disasters increases in intensity, the prosperity and sustainability of the global economy and the environment is under dire threat. So the urgency of addressing the causes of climate change and accelerating a just transition to green energy is more pressing than ever. Notwithstanding the denials of climate skeptics and their assertive promotion of new fossil fuel deals, the issue before the world is not whether, but how to accelerate. But how to accelerate the transition away from the carbon-emitting energy sources to green energy, reaching net zero carbon emissions by the year 2050. Many factors complicate the transition, complicate the acceleration of a just green transition, especially in Asia. First of all, the green transition is taking place within a world characterized by intense geopolitical rivalry. And the main players especially are the United States, China, Russia, and Europe, but others as well. Addressing climate change is by no means a geostrategic issue, with nation states jostling and positioning themselves to be dominant players in the green energy space. Secondly, there is a wide diversity and variety of concerns about energy security, while the transition away from coal and other fossil fuels is taking place. The availability of adequate finance, especially finance without strings attached, to fund renewable energy projects is a widespread problem, although increasingly major companies and private investors do see opportunities. Fourthly, there's access to latest and most effective technologies is uneven, as we've been just hearing in the previous section. The differences between countries' stages of development affects their ability to support new major projects is the fifth particular point that I would emphasize. These considerations means that it is not simply a task of maintaining the momentum for reducing carbon emissions, but also one involving multiple cross currents and other geopolitical dimensions. At the macro level, the need for all countries and stakeholders to work collectively together at the global level is vital, as evidenced by COP30 about to open next week. COP is crucial to maintaining and raising awareness of the problems we face, deliberately setting ambitious goals and striving to achieve consensus about implementation of necessary actions. Unfortunately, COP's commitments are not enough alone to ensure that global consensus on implementation to reach net zero by 2015 is guaranteed. Action is not always taken as promised, and levels of commitment in practice vary considerably. Implementation is even more difficult given prominent global voices promoting the expansion of fossil fuel exports. At the regional level, and especially in Asia, the importance of taking actions both collaboratively and nationally is growing exponentially. As the fastest growing region in the world for 4 decades, Asia's demand for energy is increasing annually by 3%, and by some accounts, the carbon emissions from coal alone have risen by 300% since 1990. So driving down emissions in Asia means substantially decreasing use of fossil fuels, especially coal, and gradually replacing them with renewables in the energy mix. No one underestimates this challenge, but it requires strong national policies and regional cooperation, for example, through the ASEAN Power Grid and innovative finance models, amongst other actions. Any country's pathway forward through this transition is, of course, shaped by its own national circumstances, including its state of economic development, its domestic political situation, its degree of dependence on fossil fuels in the energy mix, and so on. Sustaining energy security and economic growth while undertaking the important work of reducing carbon emissions is both necessary and critical. Energy security is central. This is well recognised by Asian-centred dialogues, namely APEC and ASEAN. What becomes important is the issue of timing and how to ensure a just transition. Climate change purists call for immediate cessation of mining and production of fossil fuels and the shutdown of all fossil fuel burning power plants, allowing only for a very short transition time. This, of course, does not adequately take account of social equity and financing challenges and is likely to affect social cohesion and reliability of energy supply. Even more seriously, climate change skeptics who short-sightedly reject the overwhelming science about global warming and call for opening of new coal plants and unlimited ongoing use of fossil fuels are ignoring the already staggering environmental impact of carbon emissions. The reality for most countries is that they pursue policies somewhere in between the two extremes, given that they must cater for the expectations of their own national constituencies for dependable, sufficient, and affordable energy, transitioning away from heavy reliance on carbon-intensive energy sources. What actions and policies can be taken generally by us Asian countries specifically to accelerate a just green transition to ultimate net zero by 2050? Much more could be said, but APEC's agenda for 2025 is a useful summary of 3 priority areas for focus and action. These are not exclusive priorities, of course. 1, expanding clean electricity through utilising carbon-free technologies. The huge take-up of cheap and cost-effective solar and wind technologies, already making a major impact on emissions, are increasingly being supplemented with additional technologies contributing to the green energy mix. These include battery storage, use of abatement technologies such as carbon capture and storage, and use of biofuels. Nuclear energy is another option, and in China there has been a major expansion of nuclear energy. However, for many countries, nuclear is extremely expensive and far too long-term, as well as raising issues within the community about safety. Increasingly, joint projects crossing geographical boundaries are taking shape. Low-carbon hydrogen projects, energy projects, are being developed by Japan and Australia, combining Australian resources and advanced Japanese technologies with a view to exporting large quantities of hydrogen energy to Japan for use in its energy grid. Secondly, California and Shanghai are rapidly building a green methanol shipping corridor project that will eventually use 100% green methanol for shipping fuel between Chinese and West Coast US ports. As an aside, this graphically illustrates that despite what might be said by Washington or Beijing at any time about their bilateral relationship, that cities and regions within those countries with business support can take major steps to address carbon emissions. The ambitious Sun Cable project, thirdly, between Australia's Darwin and Singapore, if it comes off, would bring solar energy from Australia through Indonesian territorial waters to Singapore. If realised, this project would contribute 15% of Singapore's power in the future and will be a model of a multilateral linkage involving maritime security and sustainability. Secondly, strengthening grid security for stable and reliable energy supply. A cleaner energy future cannot be realised without robust infrastructure to support it. Major investment is needed so that power grids can be modernised to ensure cost-effective grids are in place which can guarantee supply, which is increasingly distributed. Thirdly, powering the future with AI-driven energy innovation. AI-driven energy innovation will help electricity power systems to be more flexible and efficient, optimising energy consumption across industry. But note that AI itself is a huge user of energy in its own right, so the growth of AI itself will depend on major expansion of cheaper renewable energy. The rise of electric vehicles, EVs, and sustainable fuels will also continue to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. Much more could be said, and I look forward to further discussion of these issues. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador McLean. We're just having some noise issues here. Sorry about that. Thank you, Ambassador McLean, for that very comprehensive overview, condensed in so succinctly and so eloquently. And I now turn to Dr. Aladdin Rilio to give his comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manu, for the introduction. And also let me begin by thanking the organizers for inviting me in this important forum and to share my thoughts on this issue of energy transition. I would like to frame my remarks by focusing mainly on the issue of climate finance, because in my view, climate finance is very critical when we talk about climate mitigation and adaptation. And I would like to situate my comments in the context of ASEAN, given my knowledge of the region at this time. Okay. Okay. I think we all know that when we look at ASEAN, ASEAN is one of the most dynamic regions in the world today, right? But at the same time, I think it is also one of the most vulnerable to natural disasters as well as climate change. We all recognize that there are indeed economic losses and hazards associated with climate change. I think those are well known. That's why if you look at ASEAN, for example, countries in ASEAN have long recognized that climate risk can no longer be treated as exogenous when we talk about achieving a sustainable and inclusive growth. Similarly, the way I see it, because climate is what we call as macro critical. Over the last few years, ASEAN countries have long incorporated climate considerations in their policies, whether we're talking about trade, finance, fiscal and monetary policies, climate considerations have been there. But for me, I think the main challenge for countries, including ASEAN, is how do you strike a balance, right? If we want to facilitate this green transition, we have to make sure that a balance is achieved in terms of maintaining our growth targets, at the same time managing the risks involved with climate change, and at the same time trying to see whether countries are able to contribute to the global discussion of energy transition and facilitation. I think one important strategy here, when I look at the issue of energy transition and climate finance, is the need for a holistic approach to climate finance and risk financing. And I think this is very important the way I see it, because it would help countries achieve what I call resilience. And at the same time, with the adequate financing needed to address climate change, it would also help improve the lives of people in the process. But of course, the reality is very far from ideal, right? Because when you look at the impacts of climate change, they have actually intensified over the years, not only in terms of intensity, but I think in terms of duration and frequency. And the sad part of that is that the public resources needed to address climate mitigation and adaptation needs are still very small and very inadequate. And I think that explains why we need resources from the private sector to be able to close the funding gap. If you look at the current evidence in ASEAN, evidence suggests that the current flow of climate finance in ASEAN is around $3 to $6 billion per year. But that is very small compared to the financing targets of the region, which is around $466 billion by 2030. I think the implication is very clear. From now until 2030, ASEAN countries should be able to increase the climate financing perhaps by 700% to be able to meet those targets of $466 billion by 2030. And I think if you also look at the funding for clean and climate technologies, only less than 1% of the existing private equity funds are allocated for clean and climate technologies. And also the development of the market is quite uneven. For example, Indonesia has a big share of these private equity investments, but other countries, the share is very small. So I think the unevenness is there. My point is that given the scale and the imperative of addressing or financing climate change, there is really a need for the region to work together. But I think before we do that, it is important for the region to identify what are the key challenges, right? So that our financing strategy becomes more meaningful and impactful. At the end of the day, financing is to be able to generate the right resources needed to make sure that countries are able to advance their climate change mitigation and adaptation agenda. In my view, there are three important challenges here. The first challenge when we talk about climate financing in the region is the limited amount of data, particularly data related to climate risks and vulnerability data. When we talk about climate adaptation projects, for example, all of these projects, as we all know, would entail risks and uncertainties. But to be able to gauge or determine what these uncertainties and risks are, you should have the right data to begin with. I think being able to manage the risks and uncertainties would actually enable investors to see returns on their investment. And as a result of that, they will be encouraged to invest more on climate mitigation and adaptation projects. Unfortunately, if you look at ASEAN, that is not the reality. Within ASEAN, countries still need a lot of comprehensive climate risk data to be able to gauge the quality of investment that needs to be adopted when we talk about climate change mitigation. And that's why I think it is important moving forward that the issue of data is being addressed by policymakers so that their basis for decision-making will become more evidence-based. The second challenge here, the way I see it when we talk about climate financing in ASEAN, is the limited understanding of adaptation, planning, and investment. In my view, without effective planning, investments can become very haphazard, right? And if you have that kind of a situation without very strategic approach to investment on addressing climate change, then that definitely would discourage private investors to invest in climate mitigation and adaptation. The way I see it, I think there are two problems here. One is because the implementation of regulatory frameworks is still not very even and it's not very robust. For me, a regulatory framework is very important because it creates some kind of transparency. We need to be able to generate the market transparency so that investors, again, will be encouraged to invest. Otherwise, without the element of transparency in the market, no one is going to invest in this climate change mitigation. Another problem here is the way I see it, is that there is a limited capacity, particularly institutional capacity, to be able to address or translate investment plans into feasible and profitable projects. Again, if I were a private investor, I will not be able to venture into something if I know the returns aren't there. The problem in ASEAN is that we have the investment plans, but they are not really translated into profitable projects. The third challenge for me when I look at climate financing in the region is that there are limited financial incentives in the region. And for me, that is important because in the absence of these financial incentives, you're not able to make our investment in the region attractive. Of course, we have to say that there are already existing incentives. For example, we have government guarantees, we have tax benefits, we also have some kind of risk-sharing mechanism in place. But the problem is that if you look at the financial system in ASEAN, it's very small, right? And given the size of the financial system in ASEAN, it basically cannot afford to support a pool of investable funds in the region. Because the reality is that our financial system is very much based on the banking sector, right? And that leaves behind the potential of what are the different options for raising capital, which unfortunately isn't there yet. Therefore, in my view, if we want to really create more financial incentives in the region, we have to be able, for example, create additional measures. One of these measures, for example, having what we call as blended finance. We also have to be able to implement all these current guarantee mechanisms. And at the same time, we have to make sure that we have targeted measures in terms of how we address the reduction in risk, and at the same time, measures that would improve the revenue generating capacity of the different projects. For me, those are important. So in closing, let me just emphasize here that while there are efforts in the region to address climate change, I think the reality is that there is still a need to accelerate climate financing in the region. When we look at the issue of climate finance, I don't think this is only an issue of fund or gap or some gap in funds, right? For me, I think it is more an issue of how countries are able to make the flexibility or adjustment from their commitment to address climate change and to be able to translate that commitment into some deliverable outputs. And I'm thinking in terms of what concrete projects can be made. Moving forward in addressing this just transition, I think the prescription is very clear. Countries should be able to have a very concrete plan. Countries should be able to also have ability to implement transparent policies. And finally, countries should be able to scale investments. But the question now is, how do countries do that? In my personal sense, I think there are three important priorities here when we talk about climate change and climate finance. One important priority moving forward, the way I see it, is that we should be able to promote policy alignment and congruence, right? I think that is very important. And on top of this policy congruence, countries should be able to implement the right policies. What are these policies? One important policy is that we should be able to promote better risk diversification strategy. As I mentioned earlier, private financing depends so much on how investors perceive the level of risk. Without being able to improve the level of diversification strategy, I don't think we will be able to generate the right funds. Secondly, I think countries should also be able to promote better issuance of sovereign wealth. So that would include, in my view, being able to promote a better pricing strategy as well as market transparency. Finally, countries should be able to mobilize blended finance and private finance. Second priority here, the way I see it, is that countries should be able also to identify what are the different facilities to be able to attract all these investments. For me, it's not only a matter of attracting investments here, but to be able also to identify what are the different assets that would help countries address climate change. And that would also include, in my view, the ability of countries to help investors identify what are these green investments. Without that kind of information, again, the issue of climate financing will become very challenging. Finally, again, I think there is a need to create some kind of platform for data sharing in the region. Because if you look at climate change, it's basically a question of how countries work together on some verifiable data, right? But without that kind of data in place, I don't think investors in the region will be encouraged to come in. So given the fact that climate data are still very limited right now, there are still gaps, okay, across countries in terms of climate data. I think in terms of measures, countries should be able to work together to make sure that all the available strategies are being put in place to address this limited data issue. Let me end by saying that in area, for example, in my institute, we just established a new center. We call that the Asian Zero Emission Center, or AZEC. This is a platform that is intended to address issues related to climate change and decarbonization. One of the things that we're trying to address is how we can create data, quality data, to enable policymakers to really address issues on climate change, including, of course, sustainable financing. We are of the view that having decarbonization or energy transmission, an integral part of that is being able to create the right knowledge. Without understanding the complexity of energy transition or climate change, I don't think policymakers will be very successful in addressing this particular challenge. So I think I better stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Leo, for that focus on climate finance and for the very practical approach of identifying the obstacles and what needs to be done. Can I now turn to Professor Shujiro Urata, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And before I begin, I'd like to thank JEF, Japan Economic Foundation, and TDRI, Thailand Development Research Institute, for inviting me to participate in a very important seminar. I'm sorry that I'm not with you in person, but I'm participating in this forum from Manila. Previous two speakers raised or gave a very good analysis of environmental issues and environmental policies in Asia. And I'm afraid that I may be repeating some of the points which has been raised already. But I prepared like three sets of comments. One is to do with goals, objectives of environmental policy in Asia. And second issue is what are the key challenges to achieve these objectives and goals. And the third issue or item is what are the policy priorities to deal with these challenges. Let me begin by indicating some of the important goals and objectives of environmental policy in Asia. Here I have three. One is, of course, to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 or 2060, depending on the countries that we are looking at. So achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions. That's the first important goal. And second is to ensure social inclusion and fairness in a green transition. And the third objective or goal is to promote innovation and competitiveness and resilience in key sectors. This is, of course, in order to achieve economic growth of this region. And then what are the challenges that we are faced with in trying to achieve these goals? Here I have 5 of them. First, energy dependence on fossil fuels. That's a key challenge because coal still provides over half of Asia's power generation. So energy dependence on fossil fuels is a key challenge. And second one is rapid industrialization. Manufacturing and heavy industries remain engine of economic growth for some countries, and also they are energy intensive sectors. And the third challenge is the inequality and employment risk. Transitioning away from fossil fuels could disproportionately affect low-income workers and regions. And the fourth challenge is the financing gap, which previous speaker elaborated on already. According to some estimate, a regional investment needs like $3 trillion by 2050 to achieve the goal. So it needs enormous amount of money to do financing the energy transition. And the last one is a climate vulnerability. Asia faces growing risks from floods, heavy waves, and droughts that threaten supply chains and livelihood. So these are challenges that I identified to be dealt with by policymakers and firms, companies in this region. So what are the policy priorities to deal with these challenges? Here I have 6 items. One is to establish a robust policy and governance framework. I think this is partly mentioned by the previous speaker. It is important for the government to set the goal of achieving this net zero by maybe legislating the this rule, and then, for example, maybe creating independent climate councils to monitor the progress made toward this goal. That could be one way to establish a robust policy and governance framework. And the second policy priority is to implement effective carbon pricing and green finance. I think carbon pricing is a very effective way to achieve this goal. And at the same time, it generates revenues, funds for green finance. So I think introducing, and some countries have already introduced this, carbon pricing is very important. And then the third one is to decarbonize energy systems. There are maybe several ways to achieve this policy objective. Modernize grids, for example, and also maybe setting renewable energy targets. Specific targets would be very may be useful or helpful to pursue these policy priorities. And then the fourth policy priority is something to do with promote innovation and industrial transformation. And I guess once again, this has been argued or raised already by previous speakers. On innovation, in order to generate or in order to pursue innovation, of course, you need funds to support this. And at the same time, maybe government may be able to kind of introduce something like green public procurement system in order to promote industrial transformation toward net zero society or industrial structure. And also, it may be very helpful to strengthen regional supply chains to promote industrial transformation. And then the fifth policy priority is something to do with ensure just and inclusive transition. In order to do this, once again, it's important to set the goal, for example, to achieve this transition. Maybe some specific examples to achieve this policy or to pursue this policy, maybe giving training and reskilling programs to these workers who may benefit from that. And also, of course, subsidy will be very helpful to achieve just and inclusive transition. And encourage community participation is a very helpful and maybe effective way to achieve this just and inclusive transition. And finally, last and sixth, policy priority may be strengthen regional cooperation, which again has been discussed already. And in this item, we can think of cross-border electricity trade, for example, or maybe regional carbon market, or carbon market linkages would be very helpful to do this. And finally, regional institutions such as ASEAN, ADB area, and others can be a very important venue to achieve this to strengthen regional cooperation. And let me end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Urata, for that very useful framing of goals, challenges, and policy priorities. Can I now turn to Dr. Mignon Chan to give her perspective?
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I wish to express my appreciation for JEF and TDRI for their well-planned agenda and excellent organization by the Secretariat for details. Now, I benefit very much two presentations here, and given the limited time, I would like to only focus on 2 points in terms of challenges and policy priority. Firstly, ESG backlash. In addition to the US and the Trump administration against climate change alert, in the case of Taiwan, we too, the anti-nuclear energy policy, mainly due to political calculation, is not conducive in mitigating climate change. Governments still import cheaper coals from Vietnam and Indonesia, and mostly at the expense of the local business efforts to add green energy to their manufacturing facility. However, the private sector takes their own initiatives on net zero targets in terms of tracing carbon footprints and green credits, so as not to be left out from the emergent green trade architecture. Now, my second point in terms of priorities, I would like to focus on energy security. Weaponization of energy resources has long been in human history, particularly in the last 5+ decades. As a recent article from the journal Foreign Affairs has documented, the market flow since 1970. They have a very good report on that. Some may harbor the illusion that the clean energy transition could neutralize energy geopolitics. Actually, in this volatile geopolitical challenge, we are witnessing a new era of energy competition. This illustrates, to say the least, our futile efforts and human incapacity of all our efforts to regulate the resource flow and direction of needed resources and technology that benefit human well-being by honoring the green Mother Earth. The competition for power-hungry artificial intelligence and worsening climate impact have again put energy security on the line. The rise of clean energy has a double-edged sword. Electricity is an input of highest value-added sectors such as advanced manufacturing and artificial intelligence. And Taiwan, in this case, also risk not being to be able to attract companies like NVIDIA to be stationed in Taiwan due to our lack of enormous energy needed for the high manufacturing area. Electricity disruptions could cause outsized economic harms. On the one hand, intense electrification is generated domestically from solar, wind, nuclear, or geothermal sources. On the other hand, the tit-for-tat snowball effects of geopolitical uncertainty have disrupted the trade investment on green energy resources. We have yet to reshape and or reinforce the regional and global governance architecture that entail green energy security for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chan, for a very succinct presentation. Can I now turn to Dr. Kin Kin Nue for her comments, please?
Thank you very much to JEF and TDRI for inviting me to discuss in this session. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. The promises and perils of renewables both are evident. Renewables show great promise in a more equitable and just energy transition. They can improve access to rural communities and reducing transmission losses through dispersed microgrids as well as large-scale sites. Renewable energy technology is developing at an amazing pace, but key issues and challenges need to be factored in, as both Ambassador Madrian and Dr. Rillu have pointed out. I would like to add that in pursuing just energy transitions, we also need to account for environmental and social impacts of mining and processing rare earth elements, including potential for driving conflict as seen as Northern Myanmar, also seen as Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Some fear that competition over critical elements along with water could play out just like how fossil fuels shaped key geopolitical trends in the 20th century. These should not discourage our shift towards decarbonization. The need to do so is abundantly clear. According to a 2024 report from the World Meteorological Organization, Asia is warming faster than the global average. Floods, droughts, and supercharged storms are now becoming regular issues rather than freak events. In pursuing just and inclusive energy transitions, we can look to the 10 principles of just and inclusive energy transition endorsed by G20 leaders during Brazil's G20 presidency. The region needs a dynamic and brave long-term energy policy that coordinates across borders and sectors through a multi-stakeholder approach. Combined, Asia has great potential to generate from various sources: solar, wind, tidal, geothermal, as well as nuclear, that will play a vital part in both tackling global climate change and addressing regional, national, and subnational inequalities. Some of the things that Asia can embark on just and inclusive energy transitions include pursuing a regional approach to integrated and informed energy policies, facilitating knowledge and technology exchange, building capacity across all concerned sectors, expanding stakeholder dialogue and involvement, and fostering public-private partnerships and robust coordination. We need to look to align regulations and encourage private sector to accelerate the transition, but the approaches need to be people-centered. As Professor Urata mentioned, social inclusion is vital. Only when local communities and population benefits will it generate long-term buy-in to policies. Ensuring that decarbonizing energy systems and adopting renewable energy sources need to deliver concrete and tangible benefits to communities, especially in places of energy generation and areas facing energy poverty. Energy transition should also generate more jobs and employment opportunities for local communities and make sure that communities across Asia can reap real benefits and also lead to sustainable and equitable economic development. This will critically help mitigate backlash and populists from hijacking the climate change adaptation and mitigation agenda. While time is of the essence, we need to really ensure that the policies and implementation deliver concrete challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well. I think our speakers and discussants have identified a very comprehensive, very rich, very extensive policy agenda of things that need to be done. And there's a whole question of the capacity to actually conceive of plans and implement them. Can I now turn to the participants for their comments and questions? I see a question from Yos. Maybe you can start.
Thank you very much, Manu. I think also thank you to all the speakers who provide a good discussions on this issue. I really enjoyed the discussions. I'd like to also address some maybe comments to Dr. Rio presentations on climate financing. I think one of the important, well, you mentioned, I think quite correctly the importance of incentive toward green financings. But I believe one important element of it is providing the right price to the to all the actions that we try to do in mitigating the climate problems. And perhaps it also include in the right carbon price. Unfortunately, in these regions, we don't really, at least in Southeast Asia, but also in Northeast Asia, we don't really pay a lot of enough attention on having the right price of carbon. Because if we don't have the right price of carbon, then there is no incentive for providing climate actions, the climate mitigations, and how we can attract financing to it. So perhaps if you can also discuss a little bit about the right carbon pricing, as well as perhaps what we have done in this region in order to try to correct these problems. And also I'd like to, I think to comment to Min Yong remarks on the how it also our discussion here in the sessions also related to the previous discussions actually on the technological rivalry, geopolitical situations, and you mentioned also about the digital data center that very power hungry. Then I read in the newspaper 2 days ago that Google would like to set up the data centers in space in order to take advantage of the solar power in space for the. So it's not about digital technology. It's no longer rivalry and race, but there is also the part of space technology rivalry in the future that also we might need to anticipate in order to have this rivalry, technological race in lines with the climate change, climate actions that we are going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Yus, for identifying the very important point about carbon price. Perhaps, Dr. Rillo, would you like to respond?
Okay, I have two comments. One, whatever Yus already mentioned. In the case of Vietnam, we try to set up the first platform for carbon credit exchange 28. So yeah, we think ASEAN need to think about how to develop carbon credit market exchange. That one, that's very the key. But that's not easy, and the cost very high because you need to, first to measure about the carbon emission and everything by the factory, by manufacturing, everything. I don't know how we can keep that fast track as possible. The second, my comment about technology. There's a little bit problem for Vietnam, right? And I think there's a problem not from developing country, but from developed country. Look at the case of EV, the car, right? Some argue that electric car, EV car is good. But now some say, no, EV car not the best choice. You need to focus first on hybrid and later on hydrogen, right? Kind of car. So, what car you need to follow, developing country. The second, the same thing for electricity, right? Two kinds of technology. One is try to focus on developing, the clean energy, electricity, solar, wind, nuclear. But another one say, okay, you can use the coal, no problem. We develop technology to store, carbon storage kind of technology. So, they focus on technology to dealing with the output, not the source for creating electricity. So, that's a depends on how your choice and uncertainty, the cost one. So I think, I don't know, that's about the risk for investment in technology. But somehow I think developed country also have kind of not common framework, but kind of common agreement in supporting developing country.
Thank you. Maybe Dr. Rillo, you'd like to respond?
Thank you, Jose, on your question about carbon pricing. I'm not an expert on carbon pricing, but I think the way I see it, it's easily said and done, right? Because you have to look, it's a market that consists of different participants. So you should be able to determine to what extent the different participants work together and to be able to identify the risks and uncertainties, okay? And also the issue on transparency of the market is also important. And I think in ASEAN and other developing regions, that can be very challenging, okay? Considering that, as I mentioned earlier, the information isn't there, right? We have to make sure that we have some evidence by which we can put our actions on. But my sense here is that if the carbon pricing mechanism is to be put in place, it has to be incentive compatible, right? Meaning that we create the mechanism that would allow, okay, all the market participants to really benefit. You know, it's not only a mechanism that would benefit the government, but to make sure that whatever mechanism we put in place, this has to create incentives for both, okay, or for all the market participants. That's why I would argue that this has to be incentive compatible to make sure that by the end of the day, it's a win-win, right? So that at least we get some results. I think for me, it's also a question of implementation. Professor Orata also identified so many policy priorities, right, to facilitate the energy transition. I think we all recognize that there are indeed a number of policies that need to be implemented. But for me, it's a question of how those different policies are being translated on the ground. It's a question of implementation. Because we all agree that there is already the commitment. All countries want to reach their target of zero emission, right? But the challenge now is how to translate that commitment into the delivery of actual results. And I think that is where the challenge is. For example, if you look at ASEAN, everybody's talking about decarbonization, right? All the different sectors under ASEAN. But the problem is that within ASEAN, there is no one coherent of implementation plan that allows the different sectors from economic, social, to political to work together. So the way they address decarbonization, for example, in ASEAN is still in silos, right? Every pillar would want to have a share of what they think is appropriate. But the way I would like to do it personally is to have a more coordinated approach, right? I think similar to issue of sustainability. Within ASEAN, all sectors talk about sustainability. In agriculture, in energy, and even in finance, right? Therefore, the solutions are kind of fragmented. So, but if we have one common framework by which sustainability, let's say energy security can be addressed, then I think that would create more concrete results, and that would make the region more credible, okay? Otherwise, we might end up coming up with more initiatives every year, and then we're just collecting all these different initiatives, but no actual results on the ground. That's why I'm a bit not really pessimistic, but wary of the new strategic action plan for ASEAN, because I'm hoping that it's not just a rehash of the old blueprints, right? But what's more important is really to have a more targeted a document that would really allow all sectors in the region to work together to address common goals like energy transition, for example. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Lo. Perhaps Ambassador McLean, you might have some comments? Can you hear us? You're on mute, I think.
Sorry. I beg your pardon. Look, I've listened very carefully to the various comments that have been made, and I think we're all talking about the same thing, all from slightly different angles, that it's really an extraordinary challenge to somehow bring the global community together on this issue, and that a microcosm of that is the Asian community, of course, where the challenge is perhaps even more severe than other parts of the world, simply because it is the fastest growing region in the world and is still heavily dependent on the use of fossil fuels, particularly coal, to fuel the industrialization that's taking place in some of the countries particularly. Secondly, I think the other real element that I would comment on is that the geopolitical element has been highlighted by a number of us, and there's nothing that could be said that could overstate that at the moment, with coercion being used by the two greatest economies against each other, and that also means that that affects. There's a saying that used to be applied in the non-aligned period of the 1960s called "the elephant's in the grass," and the grass is the one that gets the damage, not the two powers that are competing with each other. That I'm afraid is sort of the case at the moment, where there is a struggle over the access to raw materials or rare earths and other necessary strategic materials that are needed for the energy transition, as well as for a greater technology. My third point would be that the points that I think again have been made by several people are equally important, is the social equity and social cohesion. In my own country, Australia, at the moment, the opposition party, which once upon a time was in government, the Liberal National Party, is tearing itself apart over whether it pursues net zero by 2025 or not. And they're on the point of dropping it from their platform, having originally agreed to it. The government of the day at the moment in Australia is strongly in favour of net zero by 2050, but that's just what's happening throughout Asia, throughout other countries, is that where people feel that they're losing something, they are not persuaded they're going to gain more by addressing the climate challenges that we all are aware of, with the great environmental and weather and meteorological incidents that are occurring around the world. So I think that's the example I've given in my own country is just simply what I know is happening in every country, that it's very, very difficult to advance further forward. So politicians need to be able to persuade the community broadly and the public broadly in their own countries of the value of proceeding with a net zero objective. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Toyoda-san, please.
Thank you very much. I think among the panelists who discussed, and maybe all the participants have a consensus. 3 pillars are quite important. Carbonization, climate change is important, but at the same time, energy security is important, and also economic growth is important. But unfortunately, 3 pillars are not consistent with each other. So one solution is Dr. Nordhaus has been advocating. It's total cost minimization approach. My question is, what do you think about this total cost minimization approach? This is total cost. What is total cost? We have to minimize damage. We have to minimize the cost of mitigation. We have to minimize the cost of adaptation. So in order to realize 3 pillars, this is one of the solutions. I just like to have your view on this total cost minimization approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to take that? Maybe Professor Urata, would you have some comment on that? Total cost minimization approach?
I'm afraid that I don't have enough, information or knowledge about this total cost minimization approach. But can I just something maybe related to this? I think. Sorry, Toyoda-san, I kind of, change the subject a little bit, but maybe somebody else can come back and respond to your question directly. But my point is Dr. Rito talked about implementation of policy. The difficulty with implementation of policy is that the policy has very often both cost and benefit. And here, I guess something to do with total cost, issue too. And because of that, because the policies have both cost and benefit, depending on who you talk to, who you talk to, have different views on this particular policy. Some groups benefit from this policy. Say talking about carbon pricing policy. Some groups can benefit from it. Some groups will bear the cost. And the difficulty comes because of this different views on the particular policy. But what is needed is the evidence. I mean, suppose, if one policy is implemented, if we know the impacts of this policy on all groups of people, then we can discuss whether this policy should be implemented or not. So what I'm trying to say is that what we need is a good research on policies, research on some environmental issues in order to select the appropriate policy for particular objectives. And to do this, to do effective and useful research, of course, we need data. And somebody, I think, mentioned about the lack of data in this field. So what I guess I'm trying to say is that what we need is a good research to decide on the policies. And if we have a good research output, then we can be sure of the right policy to implement. So-called evidence-based policy making, which is getting very popular, I guess, idea these days, is what we need. And this, I think, comes back to Toyoda-san's comment on total cost approach. In order to do this, of course, we need a good research on total cost in this case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Urata. Would any of the other speakers or discussants want to comment on the NODA's idea of cost minimization? No? No. Toyoda-san, do you want to elaborate on that since there's not much knowledge on this, but it sounds very interesting.
Well, thank you very much. I think Professor Urata's approach is quite important. We need data. But actually, in order to apply this total cost minimization approach, which is advocated by Dr. Nordhaus, we need data. We need analysis. And actually, our friends, Institute of Energy Economics, did make analysis, and the best answer is, unfortunately, it's not 1.5 degree, it is 1.7 degree. So I think some people don't like this approach, I know. But actually, the important thing is how to make a balance between three pillars: climate change, how to deal with that, how to let particularly emerging economies achieve economic growth, and also energy security. But in order to do that, I think, unfortunately, 1.5 degree scenario cannot be idealistic. So I just would like to raise this issue, which might be very pleased to welcome, but that is a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Yos, and is there anyone else who wants to comment besides? Okay, Yos first.
Well, I'm also not really familiar with the cost minimizations approach, but I think that's really interesting to put this three goals: decarbonization, energy security, and economic growth. Although, in my opinion, there are so many cases that we can see those three are not really a trilemma. We can have it together. Like, for example, on the energy decarbonization, energy transition versus energy security, we have seen in many cases there are some trade-off between them. But in the case of European Union, the war in Ukraine actually lead to a very big energy transitions ever for them. They invest a lot in the renewable energy because the concerns about energy security from the Ukraine war. So those two at least are not really a trade-off to each other, and we can find a way, mechanisms in order to make them go hand in hand and give us a very productive result, productive outcome.
Thank you for that, Yose. We are running out of time, but it would be good if we had some comments or contributions from our Thai participants. I believe that they've not had their say yet. Any inputs from them or from, oh, yes. If not, perhaps Professor An, yes?
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to raise this question to Professor Sujiro Urata. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Professor Han.
Well, it's so nice to meet you. You look fantastic.
Sorry, could you speak closer to the microphone because your voice is a little low.
Thanking for you to join the Jeju Forum in August, despite your hospitalization. Appreciate that. Okay, let me take this opportunity. As you know, well, the China, South Korea, Japan is one of the largest, energy consumers in the world, as well as the largest carbon emitters. So here, China is now, is developing the electric vehicles, solar panels, is dominating the whole world, right? And in a sense, we are competing to produce electric vehicle and solar panels and so forth. So that's fine. I think that's my question is that once the South Korean economists, the energy economists proposed CJK, China, Japan, and Korea should build a CJK power grid system like this ASEAN deep power. And but I think response from the Japan and the China, I understand rather lukewarm, and I would like to explore where now you assess this development. This is I think the important topic, and actually the last time CJK leaders touched upon the very close cooperation on the weather change and also energy, the consumption, so forth. So, well, CJK now, in a sense, compete each other for the forthcoming AI-driven technological the revolution, which requires a massive demand for the electricity power. So I think that the CJK, because of geographical proximity, we need to develop more coordinated, the energy sort of the power grid system. That's my view. So I would like to hear your, assessment on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for very, I think, important but very difficult question. It's easier for Japan and Korea to get together to cooperate than obviously, Japan, China, or maybe Korea, China. But in terms of, well, depending on which kind of issues or technologies or system that you're talking about, maybe you have a different approach. For example, electricity kind of transmission system. I mean, even inside Japan, we have two different systems. So it may be very difficult, but it'll be very nice if we can cooperate and collaborate so that we can use electricity more efficiently. But again, this comes down to geopolitical issue, I'm afraid, between China on the one hand, maybe Korea and Japan on the other hand, or sometimes even Korea, Japan. So I really don't know the answer to this very important question. That's just my gut feeling. Maybe you can ask Toyoda-san. He has a deeper understanding of the issue. Thank you.
Toyoda-san, do you want to comment? No.
I simply agree with Dr. Urata. The coordination or cooperation among three countries is quite important. But it is also true, as Professor Urata said, it's not easy. But I think, it is quite interesting for us to conquer the challenge, which is not easy. So I think we should continue to make efforts to coordinate with each other. So I think my answer is yes. Thank you.
That's good to hear. We are running out of time, but I'd like to see if Ambassador McLean has any concluding remarks, and then Dr. Aladdin Rillo as well. Ambassador McLean.
Thank you. Look, I'm intrigued by the most recent discussion, and completely agree with Toyoda-san and Urata-san that in practice I can't see three countries nationally at least working together. But that doesn't mean to say that there can't be quite a lot of linkages between private companies or countries on specific instances. And that's why I gave a couple of examples in my original remarks, which included the hydrogen using Japanese technology and Australian resources. That's the sort of thing that can work. But certainly I don't see anything possible as in the sense of, say, creating a North Asian grid or anything like that. But nonetheless, I think it's still very important that the sort of idea that Professor Ahn mentioned is the sort of creative solutions that we as countries in the region all need to be able to think about and try to encourage the various private companies as well as sometimes the government's involvement, particularly where finance is involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. William?
Maybe I think when I look at energy transition, for me, definitely it's, or energy security, it's a regional public good, right? And no one can achieve it alone. So I just would like to emphasize the importance of coordination and cooperation. Maybe at the regional level, it's important for, let's say, in the context of ASEAN, to really just identify, prioritize what do we want to do about energy transition, by ensuring, for example, that the different initiatives within ASEAN are really in sync. For example, within ASEAN, we're talking about climate-resistant infrastructure. but that particular initiative is not being supported by what's happening in the finance sector in terms of the financing mechanism. So I think if the right coordination and cooperation is made in place, then I think ASEAN, in my view, will be able to really create some impact and really address issues that we're all discussing. At the country level, I think coordination is very important. You know, I think my take from your the idea of minimizing costs, maybe it's about the trade-offs that also mentioned by Jose, right? I mean, everything we do as an economist, we all recognize that there are always trade-offs, right? Because resources are limited. To what extent we're able to minimize, you know, the trade-offs, maybe that can be equivalent to your idea of that cost minimization. I'm not very familiar with that, but my point here is that at the national level, given the complexity of energy transition and decarbonization and everything, it is very important that policies are well coordinated, right? And I think that also implies some kind of institutional capacity on the part of policymakers to be able to put in place the right policies and really understand what's going on the ground, because otherwise there is a risk of just putting everything there without really achieving at the end. So coordination for me and cooperation are critical. Thank you.
Professor Urata, would you like to make any concluding comments?
Yes, thank you very much. Just one comment. I think people's appreciation of environment, or our appreciation of environment, is very important in influencing policymakers and also influencing companies toward the better environment. Because I mean, it's quite obvious if we campaign for better environment, that should be reflected in policies or election and election of policymakers. And also, if we appreciate the companies which pursue environmental friendly policy, then companies, say stock prices may go up, and that will of course lead to a better environment, because companies will get more money to use for improving environment. So there'll be a kind of virtuous cycle starting there. So what I like to emphasize the importance of our appreciation of the environment. That is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Urata. Dr. Chan, would you want to make any comments? Nothing? Okay, thank you. And Doc Nue, any comments? Concluding thoughts? You're on mute, I think.
Thank you. I noticed that the discussions we have done are more on the challenges than the benefits. But then we aim to believe that challenges are opportunities. So I do believe that we can find solutions to address challenges and change into opportunities. And I agree with Dr. Urata about the research. I think we need to have the operational research and pilot projects. They need to be carried out. And then we can choose a sector or one or two sectors. And with that pilot study, we can get more evident data so that we can work on minimize total cost minimization. I think that only that I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you'd agree with me that we managed to cover a whole range of factors involved in the accelerating the transition. Please join me in thanking the speakers and the discussants for this very rich discussion. And also, I'd like to thank the Japan Economic Foundation and TDRI for putting all this together. Thank you very much.